If I could have your attention, we'll be starting a welcoming. It's not really a meeting tonight. We want to move things along. Is everybody settled? Does everybody have a red ticket for the door prize? These are the 2 door prizes. There's no charge for those. And there'll be a break, and you'll have another opportunity to buy raffle tickets if you like. And I'd just like to acknowledge 2 garden club members before we get started. One is Laura Eisner. She has, for 3 years, written a weekly column in the Saugus Advocate of Saugus flowers and Saugus gardens. Laura, would you stand? Thank you, Laura. Laura is a landscape artist and a landscape designer. Actually, I guess she's an artist too. And she works for Northeast Nursery, and they generously donated one of the raffles tonight for $100. So thank you, Laura, for overseeing that. And the second garden club member that I'd like to acknowledge is Joni Albee. It's just been discovered that Joni is the sketch artist in the Saugus Advocate. Joni, would you stand? And during the pandemic, Joni did a sketch of an artist, did an artist sketch of someone and gave a wonderful background and introduced them to our community. So that's been a wonderful thing for us to meet new people through your sketch artist. Now, I would like to introduce our guest tonight. That's Lisa Greene, and she is from Beach Plum Flower Shop, which was located in the Tannery area of Newburyport. She is the owner of 2 florists, one in Newburyport and the other in Exeter, New Hampshire. And she's been a florist for over 40 years, 43 years actually. And I would like to ask her to not just give a demonstration, but explain to us what all the alphabet letters are behind her name. She is wonderful, and we appreciate her coming with us tonight. She actually was our guest speaker when we had to cancel our last meeting here 3 years ago. So we're back, and Lisa is back, and you're back, and thank you all for coming.
Hello, everyone, and can you hear me? Is the microphone? Okay, perfect. Sitting here and kind of watching you all and looking back on COVID, and it's so nice to see everyone back together again. It's so nice for you seeing your friends, and it's just wonderful. So I'm so happy that you asked me to come here and do this presentation tonight. 43 years. This was my 43rd Mother's Day, and I think it was the toughest one we've had yet. Our help shortage is difficult, getting the flowers is difficult, the cost of everything is difficult. But you know what? The people who came into the shop loved their flowers. We love it when we can help somebody say who's not right near their mother, Happy Mother's Day, and we love you. And that's why I started doing this, and that's why I'm still doing it 43 years later. So it's a wonderful profession, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this. Now, one of the things that I'm doing right now is any of the materials that you have, you just want to take off, anything that doesn't look great, and just kind of go through and clean up your materials. This is called snowberry. And it is something that we get now. It comes in this beautiful pink color. Berries are nice because they give you a neat texture. So if there are berries available, I'll use berries. If there's not berries available, I might be using flowering branches or thistle or something different just to give your arrangement a little bit of texture. Now, part of the introduction was she was alluding to the letters behind my name. So I am Lisa Greene, AIFD, AAF, PFCI, CFD. Now, you might know one of the two others in Massachusetts. One is Faith Cass in Cambridge, and the other is Bill Graham in Salem. And worldwide, so there's 3 of us in Massachusetts, and worldwide there's less than 100 of us that have that triple crown in floral design. And one of the things that I kind of laugh about, there was a quote from Billy Joel, and he said, you know, if you hang around long enough in any industry, you're going to rise to the top, because just by longevity, you will make it. So I've just been playing my songs, and people seem to like them, so it's a good thing. So what I just did was I just took a tie leaf, and I cut the stem off, and I just cut this rough part of the spine out of it with my knife, and that makes it roll beautifully in the vase. So it's a cute little vase on its own, but when you put that leaf in there, you just give it a finishing polish that makes it very professional. And if you don't have an aspidistra leaf, you might try a hosta leaf. You might even try some salal leaves and just put them down in a little pattern. So the aspidistra leaf is a very hard cell foliage, so it doesn't cause bacteria under the water. It stays nice and clean, and your water stays nice and clean. These are just little hydrangeas that on Mother's Day, we had these beautiful pink hydrangeas in the shop, and a customer was trying to get a wreath off the wall, and it popped off the wall and landed on the hydrangea plant. So instead of throwing it away, I just cut off all the flowers. You get very warm water. You get some alum powder from the grocery store. You recut the stem, you dip it in alum powder, and then you put it into the hot water, and it will perk right up. If you ever get an arrangement and it has hydrangeas in it and they faint on you, you do the same thing. You take them out, you put them in a glass of hot water after you recut them and dip them in alum powder, and they will bounce right back. So I love the hydrangeas, and especially this color. It's just that beautiful, shocking pink. And then I'm going to add a rose. How many of you have seen this rose? It's a fairly new one, but once you get it, you will always look for it. It's called Free Spirit, and it's not a garden rose, but it sure looks like one. And it smells awesome. It has that beautiful tangerine, apricot color that comes out to this hot pink, a little bit of hot pink on the edge. So this orange and hot pink, when you put that together, I mean, how pretty is that? And we're going to add a couple of those. These roses are grown in Colombia, and a lot of our roses are, but they produce just beautiful, beautiful roses. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of this snowberry. If you're using woody material, you shouldn't really cut it with a knife. It's better if you can use clippers. You're much less likely to cut yourself. I, however, use the knife because I can keep flying along, not changing tools if I don't have to. But if something is really woody, you'll definitely want to cut it with clippers and not with a knife. But see how that adds a little bit of texture in there? So when you do that, you take yourself from just a amateur garden flower loving designer, and you can work on becoming a professional. So the little leaf in the bottom, adding more texture, those are my 2 tips on this arrangement. What do you think? I'm gonna just put that one there, and then we're gonna move over for our next arrangement. Now, one of the things I do as a florist is I listen to the story of my customer, and I find out exactly what they want to do with flowers. So in this case, we're going to pretend that the scenario is that this was a doll bed that belonged to a grandmother who wanted to use it at her granddaughter's baby shower. So we're going to do an arrangement in here, and we've got some different types of flowers because for a shower or an event, you kind of need the flowers to be a little bit bigger. So this is going to go on the gift table, and we're going to use some cymbidium orchids, which are just stunning, and they're very happy this time of year. We're going to use some pincushion protea, which proteas are wonderful flowers. There are thousands of different varieties of them. This particular one is called pincushion because when you look at it, it looks like a bunch of little pins stuck in the head. And they come in yellow, orange, different shades of those colors. Oops, sometimes that happens. But there's also other protea. Have any of you ever seen a king protea? They're just a beautiful, huge flower that dries stunningly. But these are a different one. These are called Brenda. And like I say, there are thousands of varieties. And the lore behind it is the Greek god Proteus had his heart broken by somebody. And as he's walking around the edge of the volcano, each tear that he drops produces a different protea. So that's why they're called protea. They're named after Proteus, and they grow in volcanic soil, very dry soil, soil in places where you don't necessarily want to be. So these are just orange carnations. And I say just because so many people have been conditioned to say no carnations. But what happens when your favorite color is orange? How many orange flowers do we have? Not that many. So this orange carnation is absolutely beautiful. And this with those free spirit, can't lose on that combination. We have some green hydrangea that we're going to use. This one is, it's called lemon lime. And it's a little bit bigger. There's another one that's a little smaller that's green, and that one is just a mini green hydrangea. But this one is lemon lime. With hydrangeas, I take off as much foliage as I can because they're called hydrangea, hydro, water. They love their water. The flowers don't always want to share it with the leaves, so we remove as many leaves as we can. We have a little bit of alstroemeria. This is called Peruvian lily, is its common name. And what I do, because these flowers last a long time, I take this foliage off of the edges so that it's nice and clean. The foliage goes before the flowers. So if you take that off, your arrangement looks fresher longer. And talking about freshness, the biggest thing to keep your flower arrangements lasting longer is to make sure they have plenty of water and that they're clean. So we're going to start with this hydrangea. Now, if I had brought some alum with me, we would dip that in the alum before we put it in the Oasis floral foam. Now, Oasis floral foam needs to be full of water. The container needs to be full of water. It's a sponge. So if there's no water in the reservoir, it can't bring it up to the flowers. So you want to make sure that every day you add water to the container to keep it supplying water. We're going to anchor it with 3 of the hydrangea. And then we're going to add 3 of the protea. And these protea will dry for you. And sometimes when you're making an arrangement and you have a heavy flower, put it right on the edge so that that edge holds it up. We're going to start adding some of our orchids. And basically, you kind of look at the stem and clip them so you have about an inch of stem that can go into the oasis. We're going to add that. And we're going to put another one back here. And now, if any of you have questions as I'm going along, just let me know. Just shout it out, and I will answer it. So we're going to go with one more of these up toward the top. We're going to add in our protea. Most things you only want to cut right before you put them in, but some of the hardier stems, like the protea, you could cut the 3 of them. After you've done it for a while, you know exactly how long they need to be. My husband's an engineer, and it's a very interesting dynamic because everything with me is, yeah, you know, it looks pretty. You know, it's following the rules. It looks happy. With him, it's like, oh no, those need to be 7 inches long. You need all 3 of them to be 7 inches long. They have to go in at a 45-degree angle. You said that once. Well, I did, and that was the right thing at that time, but not necessarily now. And so it's very interesting, but it is handy to have him around because whenever I need something built, you know, we have a wedding in Marblehead, and it's right on the water, and the bride wants us to make her a shelter so that she can get out of the limo and be behind that, and when it's time for her to do her grand entrance, she'll step out of it and walk down the aisle. He goes, oh, a bride blind? And so he created that for me, and we've used that many times. These are little spray roses. When you grow these spray roses, you let every bud that shows up grow. If you want to do a single long stem rose, you take all the buds off except for 1. So that's the difference between those two. And then we're going to add a little bit of alstroemeria. How's it looking on the front there? Since I can't see it. All right, and where's my knife? Here we go. Florist knives tend to be colors that you can see that don't blend in with the flowers because we tend to put them down and lose them. So we're going to add a little bit here. And the theme on this bridal shower was just color. She just loved color, and she wants nice bright colors for this arrangement. And then we're going to just fill in with the carnations. And when this is done and there are no more, you know, when the flowers are gone, then she has the keepsake of her grandmother's doll bed. So let's do one more right here. And when you're using Oasis, you want to make sure that you get that flower about an inch into the Oasis. Now, when I've been teaching design classes, sometimes we'll have people, and all of these stems will be in 3 or 4 inches into the Oasis. And they get halfway through, and I can't fit any more in there. Well, that's a shocker because you've got, you know, if you think of the game Kerplunk and all of the sticks crossing, and then you can't get another stick in there. And that's what happens. So just about an inch is good. And then keep the water level high, and your flowers will last without any trouble. Okay, and so this is our doll bed. Oh, I have a plastic dish in there with the Oasis foam. That's a very good question. You always want, and sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually take some green plant foil and put that in there as just a second barrier in case any water leaks out, because you want to make sure that the water doesn't leak. Okay. The next one we're going to do, can you hear me? Because I'm kind of in between the microphones. Okay. The next one we're going to do is just more of a traditional, just a large, beautiful arrangement that can be used in the center of a big table, a big round table, or even a farm table. Right now, all of our weddings and events are tending to be on farm tables. And people always want to know what to do. So first thing to go to, let's make a garland out of greenery. So remember how a few years ago, 10 years ago, every wedding had mason jars and baby's breath? If you look at pictures from, 2015 to now, every wedding has a garland down the center of the table. So we're seeing a trend coming back to having arrangements. And what we're doing on the farm tables is a bigger arrangement and then 2 satellite arrangements and just a little bit of loose greenery to connect them. And then that way people can take them home, because at the end of the night with a garland, what are you going to do with it? So they're beautiful, but people are definitely getting back to traditional arrangements. Now this greenery that I'm using is called salal, S-A-L-A-L, or lemon leaf. It's grown in the Pacific Northwest, and it is a huge crop out there. There's a very high demand for this in Europe and in Japan, and so 90% of this crop goes to Asia from the West Coast. We still have it and we can still use it, but a lot of it is going to Asia. A fun thing to do with this at Christmas time is to take one of the leaves, take a little melted white chocolate, paint it on there in the shape of a leaf. When it hardens, you peel it off, and it has all the veins in it, and it's beautiful to decorate cakes or things for the holidays. And you can put a little bit of pink food coloring in it, and you can make poinsettias, which is always fun. This hydrangea is the mini Greene. So see how it's just a little bit smaller than this one? Sometimes this one is called mojito. That's another name for that one. So we're going to just add a few hydrangea in here. So what I did with the salal was I just made a base of green. So I've gotten used to twisting it in my hand, cutting it and dropping it in. If you're doing it one stem at a time, what you want to do is you want to put one in this way, put one in this way, one in this way, one in this way. You want to cross those stems in here. It's called lacing your greens. And then when you put your flowers in, they'll stay exactly where you put them. When you're doing your greens in arrangements, you want to pick, different variations in color, different textures. There's a lot of greens in your yard that you can use. Like right now, the privet in my front yard, when it was just budding and starting to be green, I love it at that stage because it just makes it so, the arrangement's so beautiful. It adds the texture and it makes it look very, very designer, and it's free. Very, very helpful for me. Our next flower, has anyone seen this one? It's a wonderful flower. It's called thistle. And with the weddings that we do, right now, the men are all wearing navy suits, gray suits. This is stunning in their boutonnieres. It also looks very coastal. So we do some of this, we do some Dusty Miller, we do little white roses, lots of little things in a little composite of flowers. If any of you have ever tried to use Dusty Miller from your garden in an arrangement and it flops right away, what you can do if you have white spray paint, just spray the back of the leaves with the spray paint, and as it hardens, it kind of gives some structure and they don't tend to faint. Because on these weddings, on an 80-degree day, when the girls love hydrangea and Dusty Miller, we better find a way to keep them alive. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit in here and see how that just, between those two colors, the electric blue and the, acid green, they just make such a pretty combination. Anybody have any questions about anything having to do with cut flowers? Okay. That's an excellent question. So the infrastructure of moving them, about 20 years ago, they came up with this system called the cold chain. So they're picked in the field, they're put on a truck, they're brought to a refrigerated facility where they're sorted, packed, and it's cold in there. And then they put them, into their bunches, and then they actually pull cold air through them, so there's no heat in the wrapped bunches. Then they're all packed into boxes with enough air, and from that refrigerated facility, they go onto a refrigerated truck to the airport in Quito. From Quito, they go to Miami. They come right off the refrigerated plane into a warehouse that, again, all refrigerated, and everything is stored cold, gets onto a truck. If you've ever seen the trucks on the road, on the side of the tractor trailer, it's the Armalini trucking companies, and it says, "How mad is she?" And it has a bud vase, it has an arrangement, and it has a dozen roses. Those Armalini trucks or any of the refrigerated carriers bring them up here to New York or Boston, and then they go out from there to our flower shops. So it's called cold chain, and they've really perfected it. It all depends, but most things are at least a week, sometimes 10 days. On these mini green hydrangea, I've gotten 3 weeks out of them, if you keep trimming them and keep changing the water so it's fresh, clean water. Someone had a question over here, yeah?
How many different places do you have to go to get the variety of flowers that you desire? It just amazes me.
In the last 15 years or so, a new industry has really popped up, and they're called flower brokers. And so they represent the farms in South America, the farms in Mexico, the farms in Israel, and they basically have websites you can go on and you can order, and you're ordering directly from the farm. So instead of going into Boston and buying from Riccardi, who I love him to death, and I love it when I need something that day that I haven't had a chance to order, you go in and you can buy it. But the flowers farm direct are so fresh, and you order those, you can order them online, they ship them Federal Express right to your door. Or they can ship them to your wholesaler, and you can go down and pick them up. Then there is the flower market in Chelsea. There is Bay State and Johnson's in Wilmington. With my Exeter store, I have wholesalers in Derry and Manchester. So there are local growers as well, local distributors as well as international distributors. And then anytime I can, I buy from local growers. So right now the tulips are coming from people who have a hoop house or some field-grown tulips locally. Also, what's that?
Do you have to hire a person just to take care of all that? And how do you manage?
That's my job. That's my job. I'm the chief cook and bottle washer. So I'm sourcing, logistics, production, people, but I have a lot of help, a lot of designers. We have a lot of help. But in my case, I do that. Somebody who's really big, like Winston's, I'm sure they have a buyer that's all they do. This flower is a different one. You probably haven't seen this before. This is a rose, and it's called veggie, because it looks like a Brussels sprout. And the nice thing is, when this opens, it has a very interesting center. And in the times of year where I can't get peonies, I can airbrush that different colors, and it can look like any peony you ask me for, which is a lot of fun. Right now, we are on a standing order of 500 of these a week. And I have a lot of flower friends, and they're like, hey, are you going to share? I'm like, hey, I was buying it before any of you knew what it was. So my customers have come to want it. They want this veggie rose. They want that free spirit rose. These anemone are from local growers. So this is from Newton Greenhouses up in Newton, New Hampshire. And, you know, we buy these. We love to support the local growers. And anemones are something that kind of look like they're going by, but at night they close up, and during the day they open up, and they last for quite a while. If you find that, you know, they're starting to wilt a little bit, cut the stem, cut an inch off the stem, put it in clean water, and it'll probably perk right back up for you. So I'm adding some of this beautiful purple anemone, which has this beautiful blue center that when you take a picture of it and you put it online, it looks very, very blue. And when the brides see it and they want that, unfortunately, in real life, it's not that super blue. But it is very pretty. Now, how many of you in the back of the room are having a hard time seeing this? Okay. How many of you in the back of the room are having a hard time seeing this? Okay. These are receding colors. So when you look at it from a distance, they get harder to see. These are advancing colors. They're brighter. They're easier to see from a distance. So if I'm doing a funeral in a big church, I don't ever want to do these blues and purples because you can't see it from the back of the church. Now, if the family comes in and says purple anemones were her favorite, I will do however many they want. But as a rule of thumb, the farther away you get from these colors, the harder they are to see. So we're going to add just a few more of those because we want this to be lush and beautiful. If you're going to do a centerpiece for a wedding, make sure it's beautiful. If you have a budget and you know what you want is more than the budget you have, sometimes do half the amount, put candles on the other tables, and make the ones that you have the size they need to be. I've never had anyone not happy with that solution. Okay, so we'll do one more of these. And how's that look? Put that one down. Now the girls in my shop would be very proud of me. During the day when I'm working in my area, stuff goes everywhere. Luckily my drivers, when I go take a phone call, they scoot on over and clean out my area, which is awesome. But I do tend to work a little messy, so I try to keep that in check. Any other questions?
I tend to love roses, but I buy the ones that are closed up, and a lot of the times they don't open. I'm not sure why. And then I'm trimming them, I'm changing, I'm putting them in warm water, and trimming them big, but sometimes they still just feel over.
Generally, the roses that are really tight, and when you look at them, if you can't see them unfurling like this, like normally people won't buy this in my shop. And I'll give them one, and I'll say, you know what? You take this home, and if it's not alive next Saturday, I will give you your money back for that. Because the open ones open, and then they kind of just stay. And they don't flop over. The ones that are cut too tight are cut too early, and they really don't have the hormones to open up. So what you want to do is you want to kind of feel the rose and feel some firmness there. It shouldn't be rock hard. Maybe it is rock hard. Some of them, like the mondials, are. You want some firmness there, and then You know, just keep the water clean and keep it, keep trimming it as you go along. I would say every day, every other day. You don't want them to end up at the end of the week, you know, that long. But that happens, and sometimes what my customers will do with that is they end up with little containers like this with 2 or 3 of them in it, and you just keep trimming them down and remaking the arrangement. Yeah, yeah. And that's also, sometimes the supermarket ones are very tight. So these are called open cut. So lots of times in the supermarket, there isn't anybody there to explain, you know, what stage to cut them at. See, I almost threw away my clippers. That's why they're orange. Okay, so this one, we just got a fun little container here. A lot of people, when they do their flowers, they just want something a little bit smaller. Now, if you noticed in this one, I didn't do a lot of greenery. And I'm not going to do a lot of greenery in this one. So we're going to have some hyacinths, which smell so good. These are, again, locally grown in New Hampshire. Then we have our Free Spirit roses again. And we're going to just clean those up. These petals on the outside of a rose, they look a little bit deformed. Now, technically, you should leave them on because that's part of the rose opening up. And that's also where there's going to be a lot of color and a lot of character. The edges are a little crinkly. So as long as they're not damaged, you should leave them. They're called guard petals, and you should leave them on there. You want to take off any foliage that's going to be under the water. I mean, look at that. It's just perfect. And one more. People often ask, should I do 3? Should I do 5? Should I do odd numbers? It really doesn't matter. It's what you want, what you feel, or how many the florist has. And then we're going to do some beautiful red anemones with that beautiful black center in them. So we're going to start with, I'm just going to put a couple of stems of foliage in there, just to give a couple things for things to grab onto. I'm going to do the 3 stems of my Free Spirit roses. And I'm doing 3 on this one, and I place them like a triangle, an equilateral triangle, 1 at each point. So we've got those in there. And then we're going to add our hyacinths. Now, what you should do with hyacinths, they exude a sap, and they tend to clog up other flowers. So what you should do is kind of figure out the length that you want them, and then put them in a glass separately so that all of that goo comes out, and then you can just take them out of that container and put them in this one. In this particular case, there's only 3 of them, so it shouldn't be a problem. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to put 1 more stem of greens right in the middle. And then I'm going to start adding my anemone. Now, anemone have attitude. They're going to look wherever they want to look. So you just kind of go with it. It's kind of like herding cats. You're not going to be able to get them to go where you want or stay where you want. So you just work with it. So I'm going to put a few around the edge, kind of looking out of the bowl. And just work all the way around the container. And as you're working on this outside edge, what you're doing is creating a grid in the middle. So when I put the ones that I want in the middle, they're going to stand up. You want to make sure the stems always get into water. Now this water is just water in this vase. There's no oasis in here. Things like anemones with hollow stems, really don't want to be an oasis. The stems kind of crush as you try to push them in. So it's better to use those just in water. And I'm going to let this one be a little bit of a renegade and kind of stick out a little bit, but not too much. So here is our arrangement. When you look at color so far, I haven't used white in any of them, because you take your color combination, your color scheme, and when you throw white into it, it tends to go, it's just a little jarring. In this particular case, there's just a little bit of white around the little eyes in these anemones, and it picks up on that. And you're probably going to put it on a table that has a white tablecloth. So that works with these. But sometimes white, you want to stay all white. It's prom season right now. So we have a lot of mothers ordering corsages for the prom. And one of the things they'll always say is, I'm going to go with, I don't know the color of her dress, I don't know the girl, I'm just going to go with white. White goes with everything. And my answer is, how do those white shoes look with that dress? And then they go, well, yeah, I guess you're right. I'm like, is it blue? I can do it in shades of blue. Is it navy? I can add some pink in there, pale pink in there. So I could do it in green orchids. And I said, if you just trust me, I can guarantee you, if you pick something other than white, she's going to love it, because everybody else there will have a white boutonniere and a white corsage. Okay, so that's this little guy. Okay, and we're going to move down. And when I said, with white, if you're going to do a white arrangement, embrace the white. So we have, for this arrangement, we have some white ranunculus, which are beautiful. And you can buy these in pots. You can put them in your window boxes. You can put them just in big pots of them in an urn with some curly willow sticks. They're beautiful. And they're just a really pretty mass flower in white. So we're going to do some white ranunculus. This is such a pale pink that it's almost white. And so, when you add that in, it adds a little bit of interest without really saying I'm going heavy on color. So we're going to do a few peonies in there. It's peony season now. Mother's Day, we went through almost 2,000 peonies at the shop, because the young men who've gotten married in the last few years, she probably had peonies in her bouquet. She probably had ranunculus in her bouquet. She probably had white garden roses in her bouquet. And if they've learned one thing, they've learned those are flowers she likes. So that's what we order. And it's funny because they'll say, do you have, rather than do not use, because they don't know what flowers not to use, but they do know the flowers that should be used because they're what she likes. So we're going to just do, this is called white majolica, and it's a really pretty spray rose, kind of a very creamy white, opens up and looks very, very gardeny. Now sometimes when you're going to do an arrangement that you want the flowers to be open, you can take the flower and you spin it in your hands, and sometimes that will open them up. So that's a little trick to make them look a little bit more open. Garden roses are kind of a dog whistle word for open roses, where you can see the interesting center. And they just look so pretty and so gardeny. And you want to just recut the stems. When the people who decide they don't want a white rose corsage, but they want a cream one. So this is the rose we use for the cream corsages. Now, it looks like it's very open. Again, this is a rose that'll last 7 days, even though it's that open. And on this one, it's going to be a little bit more free-form because it is kind of a garden arrangement. I'm going to add a couple of pieces of greenery, the salal, to that. And this is the arrangement that I make when somebody says, I want you to make an arrangement that doesn't look like something from FTD. So I don't think anything I make looks like something from FTD, but when you kind of go this wilder route, you definitely get away from that. So I'm going to add some of my ranunculus. And again, like the anemones, they have a little bit of attitude. You just work with them. Take their curves and have them do what you want. We're going to add some more in the middle. The thing about this design style is that in the middle, it kind of goes into the middle and then it comes back out. So it's kind of a little messy and it goes against what we've all been taught. Because usually when I teach floral arrangement, I say, okay, you think of a geometric shape, a triangle, a circle, an oval, and you put your perimeter flowers to outline that. You set your height, and then you stay within those connected lines. But with this, you're going to have some very short ones. You're going to have some very tall ones. This is kind of the farm stand style. Because at the farm stand, what they're doing is taking the flowers at the length of stem that they can get. Because they need to sell every stem. Because you might have a beautiful crop coming along, and then you get a hailstorm, and you lose that crop. So every time you have a viable flower, you're going to try to make it work for somebody. And I fully encourage everybody to go to a flower shop, because there are a lot less of them now, and that's where your professionals are, and that's where, when you need professional service on your flowers, you want to order them and know they're going to get there, you can go to a florist. But all of these farmers markets and farm stands and these local people growing flowers, their flowers come in the summer. They can't sell you flowers in November because they're not growing in their fields. So if you drive by a little farm stand on your way home, you know, from a trip to the lake or the mountains, stop and support that little local grower. Okay, now we're going to add our peonies in here. And these are the Grand Dames. So you want to make sure that they show beautifully. This one's going to come out over here. Make sure all of your stems are in the water. And this one is going to come out over here too. And my brain has trouble keeping it messy. So I keep trying to want to fix it. So, and I like the way that looks, but it's kind of boring. It needs the texture. All of these guys have texture, but this one doesn't. So we're going to take a little bit of wax flower, and we're going to add that in here. Wax flower grows in very sandy soil, South Africa, California in the mountains, New Zealand, Australia. It's coming to the end of its season. But see how that just gives it a little bit more character? We'll just add a little bit more to that one. Anybody think of any other questions? Okay. Hydrangea the hot water when you're first processing them. Everything else, if you want it to open up, you can use warm water. If you want to keep it, it's like right at the stage you want to keep it cold. So cold water, put it into a refrigerator, but not your regular refrigerator. Because your regular refrigerator has produce in it, and produce produces ethylene gas. Ethylene gas makes your flowers sleepy. They just kind of, close up a little bit, faint a little bit. So if you have a beverage cooler, you could put it in those if you needed to keep something tight. The ranunculus?
Yeah.
What was it again?
Would you repeat what you said at the beginning when you opened them, they would go into?
Oh, yes, they're bendy and they will want to go in different directions. So what you want to think of when you're placing it in your arrangement, you want to put it where its little face is looking. So you'd want to put it like in this, if it's going like this, you put it in the side so it's looking out. If it's, doing this, you put it in the top so that it looks good coming down on it. So you just look at the face and put it so you see its smiley little face the best. Yeah, they are beautiful. They are just absolutely beautiful. Okay, so here is our California wild. And now we're going to do one. Sometimes you have a vase that you want to use that's different, has some character. Customers will bring them in, and what will look good in here. So then I'll tell them what will look good in there. Oh, that's not what I was thinking. I wanted to do those free spirit roses. I'm like, but it's beautiful. It's green. You want to play up the green. It's got character. And it's kind of like when you go to the hairdresser and, you tell them, this is what I want done with my hair. And then they say, oh, we can't do that with your hair. So it's kind of, this is what we want to do. Sorry for hitting the microphone. This is what we want to do with your vase. So I'll, again, over the years, people have learned to trust me. And I'll say, you just leave it with me, and I will make something beautiful for you. So this flower is called Bells of Ireland. And I love it when customers come in and they go, those Irish bells, those Scottish bells, those, whatever it is, leprechaun flower. They come up with all these different names for them. And so I am just going to use a couple of those to give it some character. And then we're going to do our thistle. And the thistle is going to be our flower holder. So we're going to tuck that in there. We're going to add a little bit more. And these will dry for you as well. And this one. Add one more toward the front. And make sure your stems are all down and in water. So now what you have is character, and you have some containment. So this is going to hold your other flowers where you put them. Now we have the beautiful yellow cymbidium over there, but now we're going to use the green one. And it's a yellow-green, and it has a little bit of red in there. And if you know your color theory, your color schemes, green and red are complementary. They're across the color wheel from each other. And so whenever you have complementary colors, you have a little bit of tension being created. So this one is standing on her own. These are standing on their own. I try to make it so that they're not fighting with each other. There. And Then we're gonna just do a little base around the bottom with our veggie rose. These guys are gonna be a little shorter. And these guys are the minor character in this composition. So right down low, right near the rim of the vase. And I'm going to group those together. And I'm going to put two more in, a little bit taller in the back. And one more over here. And then I'm going to spin that around because I know I need something right here and I can't do it backwards. So I'm going to have to see it. And I'm going to add this carnation. Again, this color, it's called pistachio. And it's a carnation, I know, but isn't it beautiful? And what do most people want out of cut flowers? You want it to last a long time. What else do you want? You want it to smell good. Carnations last 10 days to 2 weeks, and they smell like cloves. So instead of people saying no carnations, they should say no pedestrian carnations. I want the special ones. And so we're going to make a little group here. We have a painting class in the tannery, and the teacher will come in on painting night and say, Lisa, can you make something they can paint? And this is the kind of thing that I do for that. And it's lots of fun, and you know, they have to come and show me their paintings when they're done. So. Does it look kind of like a work of art? Okay. The pistachio green carnation? Pedestrian. Oh, pedestrian, meaning like every day, walking down the street. Yeah. Because I had to find a word that wasn't insulting when people will say something and it's like, you know, well, you used to say, well, that's very supermarket. But right now, some of these supermarkets are giving us a run for our money. You know, they're hiring florists. A flower shop has a hard time giving you life insurance, health insurance, vacation days, vacation time. But Whole Foods can certainly offer all those things. So I'm going to do one more really quick arrangement because one of the other things that we do is people have houses out on Plum Island or houses in Newburyport that they don't live in all the time. And they might use them for Airbnb. They might, just use them every once in a while. So what they'll do is they'll order silk flowers. And kind of my thought on silk flowers is, if we're going to do silk flowers, we better do the nicest silk flowers we can get because they need to look real. So when I make a silk arrangement, I'm always thinking about flowers that look real. So this greenery is really pretty. I'm going to add a little bit of the artificial thistle. We're going to add some tulips. And I'm going to design it in what's called a spiral style. So I'm crossing the stems at one point, give it a little turn. You put the next one in at a 45-degree angle, you give it a little turn, and you just keep adding your flowers in there until you get your bouquet. And they're roughly the same length. I don't really want them to be, too wild. This is a very traditional arrangement. It's probably going to go on a side table or maybe a coffee table or maybe at the landing on the stairs or the front entry when you come in. Lots of times we store the vases for our customers. So they might call us up and say, okay, I've got people going into the house this weekend. Can you use you know, the dining room vase, the entryway vase, and the, you know, the upstairs bedroom vases, and, you know, just do flowers to make them feel welcome and at home. And we do that for them. Add a couple more tulips in here, in the middle. And I had pre-cut these stems to all be about the same height. But if you do have to cut them, I had an issue recently with carpal tunnel. I had carpal tunnel surgery on both wrists and both elbows. I had cubital tunnel in my elbows, carpal tunnel in here. And I can't use regular clippers, wire cutters. So my husband found these, again, handy to have an engineer around, and they just cut like butter through anything, thick stems. And so we just take that. New trend in vases, to have them wrapped in wicker. And very, very pretty. We're going to add our arrangement in there, just drop it in. And can't tell that that's not real. So, thank you all. Anyone have any questions before we wrap up? Okay, got a couple questions back here. No, because once they have, the question was, can you make a white carnation or a pink carnation, a regular old carnation, different colors? Once those carnations have taken up water and they're hydrated, you can certainly add some food coloring to the water, and you'll get a few little petals that will be that color. What you need to do, if you really want to do that, is get to the florist and say, can I buy 25 carnations dry out of the box? When you get home, you mix that water in there. You mix the water in the color, and that first water that they drink has the color, and you can change the color that way. Okay, yeah? Do the names of them again? Okay, it's the white Majolica rose, the white peony, the white wax flower, and ranunculus, the white ranunculus. Alum powder is a pickling spice. So when you go into the spice aisle, it's out usually when it's pickling season. And what it does, just like it does for the cucumbers, it opens up the cells so that they can take in the moisture. So the cucumber, so they can take in the brine. For whatever reason, hydrangea and cucumber probably are related somewhere, and they both react beautifully to the alum powder. Doesn't work on other flowers. I don't know why. I believe these are going to be the red tickets that came with the door.
These are auction.
Yeah, so these are auction as opposed to raffle. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, one more over here. Oh, awesome. Oh, thank you. Thank you. We love to hear that. We love to hear that. We really take pride in all of our work, because one of the things I realized a long time ago is that, yes, I sell flowers, but more important than that, I deliver emotions for people who can't bring them themselves. I bring, more joy and celebration to life's special events. So it's really, really important. When COVID hit, and the owner of the shop, I didn't own the shop at that time, she said, I'm sending you all home. We'll weather it out and we'll see it on the other side. I burst into tears and I said, I can't do that to the customers. So I went in every day. I went to the flower market. I bought the flowers. I brought them back. I conditioned them. I made the arrangements. I put them in the car and I delivered them. Contactless delivery. And all of the people were so grateful that they could get their flowers or send their message. So that's why I do this. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me tonight. And If you're ever in Newburyport or Exeter, stop in and say hi.